Hello everyone. Today we are going to be focusing on my one little patch of actual ground, and we're going to do something, well, at least that I think is exciting, because this area is all shade, but I planted a lot of part sun to full sun plants, and some of them actually did really well. So if you are gardening in a full shade area, I'm excited to show you how these did. Now, there are a few different definitions of what is considered full shade. Full sun, I feel like it's pretty well established. It's 6 to 8 hours or more. Part sun's usually 4 to 6. And then full shade, I've seen anything from like under 3 hours to under 2 hours. So I'll tell you a little bit about the sun exposure that this gets. So the sun's coming from that direction over the wall. So from about here to here, where it's not shaded by the tree, this gets between 2, maybe 3 hours at the most of sun, and it is the direct noon sun, so it's the very hot sun. So it's been interesting seeing what works in terms of plants that can handle the shade pretty well, but also can handle the hottest part of the day. And then from here over, it gets no sun. So that is 0 hours of sun. So there is even a little bit of difference in the space, but I'm going to take you up close. I'm going to show you how the plants are doing, what their sun requirements are, and then we are going to pull the annuals. And that's even a little sad for me because they still look really great, but I'm trying to plan for fall and winter. And when I'm looking at this space and seeing the annuals, I can't figure out in my head what it's going to look like. So I need to get these out of the way because I'm a very visual learner, and having all this full, I can't really tell what needs to go where. Also, this space I just planted up this spring with kind of the extra plants. I do have some perennials, but I'm very open to just moving things around next year as need be. But let me show you how these flowers did, and then we'll pull the annuals. First off, let me point out the flowers that are labeled for part shade to shade. Usually when I'm looking for color in a shaded area, I'll go for either impatiens or begonias. So what I have in here are impatiens. This right here is Soprano White, that is one plant. That's Soprano Rose, also one plant, and one Soprano White back there. So those got larger than I expected. They even, in one of the containers I had, completely covered a hydrangea, and I don't know if it's still alive. But I really love how big these got, how full of flowers they've been the whole season. I have never fertilized anything in here. I think I maybe put some biotone when I first planted, but I've never come through with liquid or granular fertilizer since then. So this is without any fertilizer, how much color these have. So I absolutely love impatiens anytime you are looking for color in full shade. But I want to look at this little section because I think that's the part I'm most excited about. So this right here is the Whiteout Superbena. This is labeled as part to full sun. And what I think really makes this stand out and what I consider it to be a success is that it's right next to the impatien that is labeled for shade to part shade. But if I'm looking at these together, I wouldn't look at this and think those are two different light requirement plants. It seems like they're blooming about the same amount. I really like how they started to intertwine together. Now, if I were to grow the Superbena in full sun, then it would flower a lot more than it's flowering here. But to me, I don't look at this plant and say, oh, that's a shame, it's barely flowering. So I think this one has done surprisingly well for being labeled part to full sun. Then a little bit over to the left in this bed, we have a Sunpatient. So this is an impatient hybrid. The variety is compact orchid. And then this one, even though it is in the impatient family, this is labeled for part sun to sun. But looking at this, I would never think this is a plant that isn't flowering as much as it should. Again, where I have these in full sun areas, they're blooming a little bit more, but I don't see a huge difference. So the fact that these are still so full of color in a full shade environment makes me really happy and really impresses me. So I know that these are flowers I could grow in more shaded areas and still be happy with how they perform, even if they're not quite as full blooming as they are in the full sun. Down here is Dichondra Silver Falls, which I ended up using as a ground cover, which I never thought to use this as a ground cover because I didn't have ground until this year. So for me, it's always been a trailing plant. But this is also labeled as part sun to full sun. Again, it didn't get as long as it does in the full sun. It didn't get quite as thick, but this did its job and covered the ground. I don't see any empty spaces. So I really like the silvery color of green too. I feel like it just creates a little bit more peaceful environment. So I even might do this as the ground cover here next year. This is one plant here. I forgot if I mentioned, but that's also one of the sun patient. One plant there, and then I think I have one more further down there, but this is looking really good. So those were the plants that impressed me the most. Now I'll show you the ones that I think did kind of okay, which first we're going to start with the Supertunia Vista right here. This is Cool Jazz. It's going to be a new color release for next year, and it's flowered, but it's not flowered near as much as it does when it gets more sun. I think it's okay. It does kind of look like a plant that isn't flowering as much as it should, while the other ones, I don't really get that feeling. In fact, there is the compact Orchid Sunpatien right behind it that looks beautiful and like it's meant to be in full shade. So that one, it was good to try. I don't think I would grow any Supertunias in full shade, just because if I'm going to grow them and the budworms are going to eat them, they better be full of flowers at some point to make it worth it. Down in here, even hidden under this hydrangea, I have another new for next year plant. This is the Supertunia Mini Vista Pink Cloud. I absolutely love this. It blooms prolifically on my rooftop decks. This one, I feel like it's doing a little bit better than the Cool Jazz. It's actually doing pretty well on my front stairs in a pot that is also full shade. I'll pop in a video of that. But I feel like this looked better at some point than it does right now, so I don't know if budworms also got to it, but I'd say this one was an okay one to me. Now, the last part to full sun plant is the Campfire Marshmallow Bidens, which is the plant right there with the flowers that look like little daisies to me. So this one plant actually looks pretty good. Again, not as full as it would be in full sun, but still is a plant I would use in the shade and be happy with the amount of flowers I see. However, I think I have 5 planted in here and they don't all look as good as this one. So as we go this way, this one has fewer flowers than the last one, and we're actually getting to a more shaded environment. And then this final one has barely any flowers right there. So these definitely do seem to have a difference, even between 2 to 3 hours versus 0 hours of sunlight. In fact, coming around here to another full shade area, so this one does get the sun. It falls within the sun line. This one doesn't, but what is kind of interesting, so this is one of the Campfire Marshmallow Bidens. It got very large. This is the largest spreading one I've ever had, maybe because it was trying to find the sunlight and wondered where it was, but I almost kind of like how this looks. I know there's no, well, there are a few flowers on it, but it just ended up kind of looking like a ground cover to me. So I don't know, I liked how that turned out, but it wouldn't be a plant I would recommend planting in shade if you want a good amount of flowers. This right here is actually the Bidens and the Sunpatien in full sun. It gets the full morning sun. I do notice a difference in the flowering of the Bidens, but honestly, this Sunpatien, I don't really see much of a difference in terms of the amount of flowers here versus down in the shade, which is really impressive. So now that I've shown you how beautiful these look, let's rip them out of the ground. It makes me sad. It's going to be okay. At least that's what I'm telling myself. Because again, I do want to start planning this area for fall going into winter, and I just can't figure out what's where in this beautiful mass of flowers. So I'll take a deep breath, and then we will start pulling. And I'll show you what I do with my garden waste, because the first year when I was just on the rooftop decks, I was bagging up the waste and then doing a yard waste pickup. But last year, I don't even know, other than anything that was diseased, I don't think any of my other plant waste left the area. Either I put it in a compost tumbler, which I now have 3, or I would just chop it up and then throw it either on the ground or on top of a raised bed that had potting soil in it to let it break down. And so now most of the plant waste in my garden stays in the garden, which is really, really nice. So let me get a vessel for the plants, then we'll pull them out. When I pull the plants, I'm going to put them into this crescent garden pot, which will be planted up with an evergreen very soon, hopefully. But I like to put all of my plants into one container, whether it's a pot, a bucket, and then I will carry it to the tumbler composter, which in this case, it's up the stairs on the garage deck. So that's the closest one for me here. I definitely needed one on the rooftop and one down here because I was not going to carry garden waste all the way up or all the way down. So now that I've talked long enough to try to put off pulling the plants, let's go ahead and do it. Sometimes I feel like it helps to apologize to them or thank them while I'm pulling them out. So I'm gonna try to do that. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, well, I've pulled almost all the annuals. I left the white impatiens because they looked really pretty and I couldn't bring myself to pull them yet. And since they're on the border, I feel like they are out of the way enough and I can start to visualize where I would put potentially some pots in here. That's what I'm thinking, is that the potted evergreens I'm going to have outside, some I will leave in the patio, some I might pop back in here because all of this is going to lose its leaves. So there won't be anything green back here. We do have that tree there, but that's what I'm thinking for some of the pots. So let me show you what is in here that's perennial. So for the perennials I have in here, I have 4 of the little limelights in front. It's their first year, so I wasn't expecting them to be completely full of blooms. 2 bloomed, the other 2 didn't. But also I have beetles or something down here that I don't have up on the rooftop deck that is gnawing on the leaves. So I think I am going to be experiencing different pests down here, potentially more pests than I do up on the rooftop deck. So that's what's in the front row. In the middle row, I have 3 mock orange plants. These bloom in the spring and have really pretty white flowers. And then I have a random hydrangea that I don't remember the name of, that I popped back there, that I got, I think, from the panel when they were giving away extra plants that the proven winners brought for decoration on the stage. So I should probably find where I put that label, but that's what's in here now. So I have a much better idea of what empty space I'm going to have this winter. For example, maybe this would look good here potentially, just to add some more color, or even a little bit further back, but this was stuff I couldn't visualize when all of those annuals were still there. All right, well, that's going to be everything for this video, and that was the first section of annuals that I've pulled. It is starting to get cooler here. It does feel like the end of the season is coming, even though we really should have another month or month and a half left, but I haven't removed any other sections. I've maybe pulled plants that have died or been covered with disease, but this is the first place I've completely emptied out. So anyway, stay tuned to see what I end up doing here so that I can look outside during the winter and see something other than the color brown or the color gray, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.